How's it going?
That was a nice little intro.
Yeah, that was sweet.
No idea what that meant, but we'll talk about it.
We're
ahead of schedule.
Yeah, look at that. We even got extra time on the clock there. So, yeah, as mentioned, this talk is about immersive learning, and a lot of you guys probably are here wondering what the heck immersive learning is. If you came into the exhibition hall, we're the ones with the VR headsets there. And we maybe seem a little bit out of place, but hoping that we can connect the dots here and help you guys to understand why the heck we're here and what we're talking about. So really quickly, my name is Joe. I work at ArborXR. We help companies all over the world scale VR deployments and make sure that if they want to implement VR, they can do it in a way that is safe and productive for their companies. We work with companies all over the board, Fortune 500 down to elementary schools in whatever state you can imagine. You see here, really what we're trying to point out here is that people are using virtual reality at scale in places where you wouldn't expect, and it is becoming the norm in a lot of ways. So I help people implement VR into their companies. We work with partners that create amazing VR content, that create compelling use cases to even explain why we would use VR in the first place, which is why I'll pass the ball to Jack here, who works for one of our amazing content partners called Moth+Flame. Thanks, Jack, why don't you give them a little intro as to what you do and why we're here?
Yeah, thank you. So, one of the things that I hear all the time, immersive learning, like my kids have a VR headset and they're playing Beat Saber and they're doing fun stuff. Is that what you're talking about? That is a form of immersive experiences. So we are a simulation training company. So our expertise is to build realistic simulations. We do a lot for the military. We're trying to do a lot for corporate. But basically putting people in realistic simulations where they have to practice, get better, get coached, get feedback, and keep trying. So what we notice is there's a gap between all of the knowledge stuff, like you learn something, but you don't get to practice. So we try to build simulations for people in HR and L&D, basically any industry, so that they can get a lot of practice in.
Yeah, so Jack, maybe can you explain a little bit what you're seeing in the immersive space, and probably, maybe even just for me, even though I work in the space, explain what do we mean by immersive learning and what exactly is that?
Yeah, so it depends who you ask, but for me, think of like a flight simulator. You're physically doing something. You're emotionally engaged in the experience. It's interactive. It's multisensory. You're looking, you're talking, you're using your hands, very tactile experience. It's very, very realistic. That's the main thing. But it's also safe to fail. And that's one of the secret powers of simulations is you can mess up. We have a lot of conversation simulations. You can say the wrong thing and you got to suffer the consequences, but you're in a judgment-free experience. So you feel safe to mess around. Immersion also has to do with the technology. So VR definitely accelerates that because when you put on VR headset, your world you're transformed. You're not distracted by your real world. You're in it. And I think that level of immersion is really interesting. It doesn't have to be fully VR, but I think I'm trying to learn Italian for a trip to Italy, and an immersive experience could be on my phone. It doesn't have to be VR. I am engaged. I am talking. I'm getting feedback. It's interactive. I feel connected to it. That's also a form of immersion too.
Yeah, the VR immersion is definitely unique, right? It creates that cognitive dissonance where sometimes you can't even tell reality from what's virtual. And even if it doesn't look like graphics are not up to par with certain technologies yet, but even if it doesn't look that way, you're still so confused. Like, why am I scared to take a step onto this plank here, even though I know I'm in my living room? So the immersive aspect is definitely real. Can you talk a little bit about, we're going to hit all the buzzwords here, a little bit about AI and how that integrates into an immersive learning experience?
Yeah, AI is the thing. I think it's the perfect learning tool. I think for us, AI allows us to personalize the experience for learners better. that can adapt. We use it in a very safe way, meaning we don't let AI make suggestions or decisions that aren't vetted by a human. You're always the human in the loop as far as creating experiences, and I think that's really important. But I think the nature of AI-driven learning, not only in simulations, is it's going to be highly personalized, highly adaptive. And I think it's the perfect learning tool because it's tailoring it to you. If I mess up in a giving feedback conversation, I'm going to know why. And I'll get to try again. And it's going to assess me on tone, delivery. Did I use the right framework or model? It's pretty advanced that way. But again, I'm very conservative. You've got to be the human moderating this stuff. We don't have any customers using OpenAI and just letting it talk to its employees. So yeah, I think a careful approach is also interested about AI, but we're doing some advanced stuff around natural language processing and understanding. It's really, really good. It's scary good. But I think the real superpower is how us as humans bring AI into our workforce. And that skill of that human and AI combination is really what I'm seeing is what makes somebody succeed with AI or really fail with AI. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. The human touch can't go away. And it's really fascinating to hop into an immersive simulation, speak with something that you know is not human, but have to second guess what you're saying and really question, like, is this person going to judge me? Like, what's going on here? And that's the beauty of doing an immersive experience, because you can get it out of the way. You can have the hard conversation before you have to have it. So we do a lot of work together, and a lot of our work that we do together is within the military. Maybe can you talk a little bit about that work specifically and how it relates to maybe a space that people will be more familiar with in the enterprise or the corporate HR realm?
Yeah. We do a lot of leadership development in the military. This is kind of the hypothesis that's kind of driven the company over the last couple of years is, can we take the success with what we're doing with basically all branches of the DoD, because they have done simulations really to the highest level, and how can you bring that to HR and L&D? And so when I tell people, well, how do you bring like military grade leadership development to the corporate space? They think of this. Some organizations do this, right? For leadership dev. It's not what we're talking about. Just to give you a little bit of context here, the military has to keep the service members ready at all times. And so the way they've used simulations, over the last 20 years, I would say, but more recently with AI is pretty advanced. I can't even show you everything that we do for the military. These are just some examples. A lot of flight simulator stuff, in cockpit work, maintenance. We do language training. Sadly, one of the most popular titles in our library is suicide intervention. So how do you help those who are about to intervene with somebody in crisis, and how do they do that properly is what we teach through some of the conversation simulations. We use both real actors. We also use AI avatars. So if you swing by the booth, you'll see the demonstrations of both, and you can be the judge. AI avatars are getting pretty good. They used to be pretty weird. Some of them are still pretty weird. But take a look and you be the judge. A lot of stuff for Air Force, Navy, and around maintenance and operations is a really key use case. The measurement on this stuff, the ROI that they're seeing, although they are expensive for the military, is still very high. My favorite one is there's Air Force that teaches how to properly turn on the engine of one of the cargo ships, airships. And they trained on that in VR before they went to the field. They went from basically PowerPoint to learn about it to go to the field. And they just make mistakes. And so VR is a really great place to practice and fail. It's also safe, obviously, but it's also cost saving. So for them, when they trained on how to operate the right procedure for turning on this C-17, they actually saved about $1.7 million in fuel costs. They reduced the error rate on how to do that procedure because they trained on it in VR by 85%. So it makes a significant difference, even though the upfront cost to build the simulations are high. For the military, they're in the millions of dollars. For corporate, they're in the $50,000 to $100,000 range. So there's still an investment, but you've got to look at the look at the return.
And to kind of bring it full circle here, you mentioned one of your favorite hard skills simulations. But one of the ones that really stuck out to me was the suicide intervention training. And I don't think it's a huge gap to tie that into something in the corporate realm. Maybe difficult conversations between leadership and their employees or coworker to coworker. What are some of the most impressive modules that you've seen in the soft skills realm that you think could translate well into the corporate leadership space or that are just compelling as soft skills in general?
Yeah, I think my favorite one in the corporate training space or HR is feedback. Everybody thinks they're good at giving feedback. What we find is people go through the simulations and they're like, oh, well, I actually could have done it better. But even positive feedback. People don't know how to give proper positive feedback. And I think that has been an interesting one. Building trust for employee engagement is another one. We know that relationship between employee and their direct manager has a big impact on engagement. How do you build trust? How do you talk about career mobility? How do you resolve conflict? How do you increase your emotional intelligence by a conversation? And how do you teach that? Those have been really popular simulations.
What edge do you think the immersive aspect gives to these soft skills simulations?
Well, the main thing is that you use your voice. You're not clicking answers in a scenario. You're using your voice. And I think people feel, obviously that's realistic. You're on the spot. I have people look at their heart rate and look at their Fitbits or whatever, and look at what's happening when they're in our conversations. It feels real. It tricks the brain it really tricks the brain to think that this is real. I think that's a really big component is you're engaged because you've got to lean forward and answer and speak in a way that will help you either end that conversation simulation well or poorly. Ironically, the first simulation I ever did, my previous company, was a firing simulation in VR. Awful. You've got to it was done poorly on top of it. But you're sitting across the desk from an older guy who's been inappropriate, and you got to call him in for a one-on-one, and it's like the last straw. And but the simulation is real, right? It can end badly, and it does end badly, and if you don't do it right. But it can also end really well. We had people crying coming out of the simulation because it was just so it was so real. This poor guy named Barry. Yeah, come by the booth. I'll see if I can show it to you. It's awful, but it does touch on those things. Is it realistic? Am I emotionally connected? Am I engaged with my voice? It's like a choose your own adventure story. Remember those? In this case, you can really hopefully learn something, get coached, try it again. Totally safe. It's not like a role play like in the classroom or on Zooms. I think that's the biggest thing is that it's judgment free. It's just you against the simulator. Nobody's watching. You can totally screw up and learn and try again. That's really the benefit. That's really what drives me. I'm really passionate about that.
Hopefully technology doesn't catch up to the point where they can flip the table on you, and hopefully haptics don't get to the point where you can feel their rage in real life. So,
well, you know what? Like behavioral interviewing, nobody really knows how to do that quite well unless you've been doing it over and over again. That's a huge request.
Yeah,
teach us how to do better behavioral interviewing.
Yeah. Interesting. So wrapping back just a little bit, you mentioned the intersection of AI and immersive solutions earlier. How can a company actually use AI to create a better learning experience within the immersive reality.
Yeah, I think the AI done well is personalizing and adapting the learning experience to the user in the moment dynamically, and that's already being done, and it's starting to become more popular in the corporate or HR space in L&D. I think that's the best use of it, honestly, is to really understand the baseline of the individual, where they're at, and to dynamically build an experience that's tailored for them. Giving feedback that's tailored to them, helping them grow. So the personalization and the adaptation those are the levers I pull for trying to bring it into an experience. Yeah.
Yeah, so we've done a lot of work together, and I know you have some exciting case studies to talk about. We've done a lot of work, as mentioned, in the DoD and the government side, but is there any case studies outside of that might be relevant?
Yeah, we'll touch on a couple, and I think this crowd might relate to it too. It's like a lot of the leadership dev and a lot of stuff. Zoom and Teams has transformed our life for sure. I don't think people are getting enough practice, and I don't think it's realistic practice. And I think Zoom role plays. Hey Joe, you're my boss, and I want to have a career mobility conversation. Ready to practice? Awkward. We're not using the right framework. It's inconsistent. So I think there's a lot to think about regarding the use of practice. That's where we're seeing most of the use cases. Give you an example, and you can see this at the booth if you want to. Leadership development, conflict management, team building, all emotional intelligence. Those are really the top kind of titles that people seem to ask for. And they can be totally tailored and customized. We're releasing a new tool today that's a complete free do-it-yourself tool. So come on by, you can build these conversation sims on your own or take them back to L&D. And it's like an articulate for immersive sims. But the